come the hour of my departure, for worlds unknown, O Lord, be with me then. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the face shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well.
All right, go ahead and turn over to the book of Esther. So, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. We're going to look at this book. We're not, going to be looking at every verse. It's too big of a book to do that. So we are going to be hitting the highlights of the chapters and the themes that we find. What do you think about? You think about the book of Esther? What? Any memories, thoughts, favorites, story, character arcs? What do you think about? When you think about Esther, comes to mind. May have been born, yeah, the Esther 4:14, yeah, the key verse. Perhaps you've come to the royal kingdom for such a time as this. We'll talk about that working providence of God here as we kind of finished off Ruth and kind of talked about that last week. Other things you think about the book, and yeah, go ahead.
Vashti seemed to be a pretty...
Yeah, Vashti, yeah. We're going to talk about her in just a minute. I think we have more questions than we get answered, and we have to be careful not to assume too much on her part, what she's doing exactly, but I think she certainly takes a stand, and a courageous stand we'll talk about. Let's see a hand back here. That's all. What else? Think about, yeah, Kathy?
I like that the tables are turned on Haman.
Oh,
He
yeah.
has to lead Mordecai through the streets to honor him when he thought it was going to be him that was going to be honored.
When the bad guy gets it. Oh my, I'm sorry. I'm telling on myself. I love it when the bad guy gets it. I like a movie, a show, and I hate it when they don't. Oh, I hate a show or movie when they let the bad guy go and don't get it. Somehow get it. Haman gets it. Oh, one of the great villains of the Bible tries to annihilate a whole people, the Jewish people. Yeah. Other things to think about. Yeah, Maggie?
Well, it seems like what we know about her childhood, she probably had a pretty rough childhood.
Yeah.
Losing her parents.
Yeah.
You know, some people let whatever's happened in their childhood lead the rest of their life.
Yeah, she was certainly born in conflict, in captivity. We know that her cousin, or really uncle, adopted father, Mordecai, is the one who looks after her, so her parents are not either not alive, they're not a part of her life, or long gone. So yeah, her incredible backstory. We wish we could know some of those details. Other things to think about. Esther.
You can see God working in the background all the way through it.
See God working in the background.
Things just fall into place the way they should. We know that's God.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mordecai does the right thing even when he thinks it's going to cost him.
Yeah, Mordecai, great hero of the Bible, one of the underrated, overlooked heroes of the Bible. Others think about the book. Yeah, Jeff?
Like you mentioned in the video that I watched on Facebook, God is not mentioned,
That's right.
but he's alluded to. And, you know, I've always thought it's really strange that God's not mentioned.
Right.
But I kind of like the way you said it on the video. It's almost like they take it for granted that the reader knows that it's God working in the background or whatever.
Yeah. It's almost like when you have to state the obvious. You ever been in those situations? And you're like, really? You didn't have to say that. When you state the obvious, it kind of undermines, right? You ever had that with someone where you're like, yes, we know. we get it. And it's like, Ruth, God, the Lord's not, it's not like there's a lot of teaching theology in the book of Ruth we saw, right? But yet God's all over that story. Same in Esther. All at such time the king is reading about this and he finds out about Mordecai and why wasn't he, what reward was he given? And it just so happens that Haman walks in and all these just so happens and this and that and God at work behind the scenes. Other things, thoughts, think about it. I think about, and I just grab one of these boxes, and that's kind of what I'm calling this, God working in the ordinary. And I don't think I've ever used a box illustration. I've used several box illustrations, so this will be one of first. But, you can't get more ordinary than this, right? You know? But this box has a purpose. Now, you've seen bigger boxes, right? And if you've ever moved, how important are boxes? You ever had to send out messages? If anybody has any boxes, we'll take them, right? Just ordinary cardboard paper box, right? Now, the box isn't everything. This is not a refrigerator, is it? It's not a car. You can't drive it. Well, you could pretend. Can be a house. You're right. You're right.
Well, kid can pretend it.
Kid can pretend, sure. But a box has a purpose, right? It has a purpose. It's ordinary, but boy, does it have a purpose. And how important are these boxes, ordinary boxes, when you're moving? Huh? Very important. Have you ever told someone who's moving, be what?
Careful.
Be careful with that. Right? The old joke in preaching school was, don't let the brother move you in. Now, that got violated immediately when I moved to Cleveland, Oklahoma. Because we pulled up after graduation, and there was the whole church on the yard there. You remember that, Angie? And they moved us in like 40 minutes. But there was a few times I had to run and say, okay, I'll help with this. Let me. Because all the professors told us in school, and be careful letting the brethren move you in. Oh, they'll get you in all right. Yeah, they'll make it fit. They'll crack. And boy, they got us in like 40 minutes. So Angie, it was boom, boom. Remember that? And it was such a great relief to have that. But we had boxes, and we moved. When we left Cleveland to go to Shawnee, Maggie had our back sunroom. Remember that sunroom in the back of that parsonage? It was full of boxes. And ordinary boxes, but have a purpose. You might even say sometimes a pretty extraordinary. You can put some pretty extraordinary stuff in a box and ship it. It has a purpose. And that's how God is. He uses the everyday, mundane, ordinary people, our lives, our circumstances, to do great things, to do His purposes. And that's what we want to see throughout.
One of the great things about God, He does that.
Yes.
He recognizes people.
Yeah, I mean, if He used always the strongest, mightiest, wealthiest, most powerful, right? We've said He wouldn't get the credit, right? But He shows beyond a doubt how He works, that it's Him and His power that's working. We just have to see it. And even though, as Jeff talked about, it's not mentioned, it's there. And so we'll see that in the book as well. All right, so some background. The purpose, one of the purposes, it continues a narrative of the salvation of the Jews. And in this instance, under the Persian rule. So, you had these world empires throughout the history and throughout the Old Testament. You had the Egyptians, right? And what did God do for His people in Egypt? He set them free. He delivered them, right? Yeah. And you're going to see that throughout. Yeah, Kathy, did you have a...
Well, and Mordecai ends up holding the same office that Joseph held
Yeah,
in Egypt.
yeah.
He ends up holding it under the Persian.
Yeah, yeah. And so you have this theme of the salvation of God's people. It's constantly throughout. God's people, what did I talk about Wednesday night? What's the history of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation for us as God's people? We're always, what? On the outs, being persecuted, being ridiculed. God calls us in a dark time to be light. That's what we talked about. And so it's constantly. Nebuchadnezzar, the list goes on. You're going to see it as well in this dark time that will happen. And so you find that. The story takes place in Susa, which is the Persian Empire's winter capital, that they would, just set up shop up in Susa. Susa during the, I guess they didn't have, with air conditioning and everything, it gets hot out and we'll talk about the geography here in just a minute. Let's quickly look at the four main characters, and then we'll come back to some geography and some maps and stuff I want to give you. And again, we're not going to unpack each of these characters at this moment, but we're going to. King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, is as he's known. Xerxes the First, or Xerxes the Great. He would be he reigned from 486 to 465 BC. So we're talking about the 5th century BC. And of course, you know how it works. BC, you count down, right? Abraham was called around 2500 BC, and you work down, right? All the way till you'll get to, what? 0, right? 0, BC. Jesus was born around 4 or 6 BC. You say, wait a minute. Before Christ, how can He be before? Well, our calendars are off. We now know that, about 4 to 6 years. So Jesus and His birth, of course, then begins AD. And it starts there with 1, right? 1 AD, 30 AD, 100 AD. So we go down with BC. So around the 5th century, 500 years approximately before the birth of Christ, is the events of this story. And we'll talk about Xerxes here. He is the son of King Darius. He's the one that, of course, with Daniel, he will allow Ezra and Nehemiah to go back and rebuild the city wall. That was very important for the fortification of the city. And so he is, now, he's a worldly, pagan king who's full of power and ego, and we're going to come back to that in just a moment with this drunken feast party that he's going to hold. And so let's go ahead and give you the, hey, if you want to go visit, that was in 1930, around late 20s. Susa. This is in the border of Iraq and Iran. So, you know, you can go over there and check it out. That was in 1920s, 30s. There they've now built around it. There's the modern city of what is now a little bit different name, but Susa. They've kind of, they built right up along that. And but there's the modern day city. If you want to go over to Iran and check this out, you know, this is the birthplace of humanity. The Garden of Eden, this area is where this would have been located. Not particularly here, but in this region. The Persian Empire was vast. You've got all the way down from India through Greece and through, you get into, of course, modern day Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. This is this area, large area that the Persians ruled. There's kind of a Old Testament map. So you've got Egypt down in the south. You've got, of course, the Holy Land or the Bible land here with Jerusalem. The Babylonian Empire would be here. And eventually the Medo-Persian Empire, of course, would be a little bit further east. And so that's going to be that, again, that's the region that they covered during their peak. And there is our time. There again, there is Susa. They're located on that, just on the other side of the border of Iraq and Iran. And so they're in the... All right, so other characters. Haman, you got to have a villain, right? We're told he's an Agagite. Well, that's interesting. Does anybody remember King Agag in the Old Testament? There's a story with King Saul. Remember what happens? What is Saul told to do with the Amalekites? Totally destroy them. Everything. Everything. And King Saul does not totally what God. He does partially what God says. And he even brags, Samuel, the old prophet, shows up. What is that I hear? I hear the bleating of the sheep. Because he says, I've obeyed the Lord.
But I brought him to sacrifice.
I brought him to sacrifice. The people wanted him. He starts making excuses. You have not done what the Lord said. That's a lesson that partial obedience to God is not obedience. You don't get half credit with God and say, well, God, I know you told me to do this, but I did some of that. Don't I get the full credit? Don't I get, no. And so you have Haman is a descendant. Now, have you ever thought about this? What if Saul would have done what the Lord said? Hello?
He would have kept the kingdom.
Now let's fast forward to Esther, though. I want you to connect to Esther.
He wouldn't be a bad guy.
It's true. I think probably there'd be another bad guy. I think there'd probably be another, but there wouldn't be this bad guy. There are no descendants, right? You've wiped them out. See, disobedience, it has a lasting effect, doesn't it? Saul's failure, 500 plus years before, is going to be the seed of hatred for Haman. You think Haman knows about the Jews, the Israelites? You better believe he does, because he hates them. Why? Because
They destroyed what could have been his kingdom.
yeah. And so the obedience, disobedience, they have far-reaching effects. They don't just impact us. Well, I get to be, this is just I can't stand it today. Christians will get in this nonsense. Well, it's my choice. It's my life. It doesn't hurt anybody. That's the biggest lie Satan tells. Every choice we make affects people. Well, it's not affecting. My drinking's not affecting. My gambling, my whatever. You just fill it in. It always affects people. God said for the third and fourth generation. Now, God's not saying he holds sin against what?
But it's
your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, but it's effect. Yeah, Kathy? It's consequences. Yeah, absolutely. And so we see that here. All right, so we have that. Of course, Mordecai. Hey, you got to have the great, he's the. Now look here. This is where it's interesting. We're going to talk more about Mordecai. He's the son of Kish
could be the same
from the tribe of Benjamin. Now,
relation of Saul's.
Now, here's what's interesting. Saul was from the smallest tribe, right? Benjamin. God lifted him up, raised him up, made him great. He disobeys God, doesn't utterly destroy the Amalekites, spares King Agag. One will come later from the tribe of Benjamin, and what will he do to the descendant of Agag? What's Haman going to be a part of? Destroying them. That's where you get to go. That's pretty cool, Robert. So I expect to see that. Smile. That's pretty cool. One from the tribe of Benjamin, from the same tribe where the king Saul was told to do something he didn't, and it had 500 years later consequences with a man named Haman. One is going to come from the tribe of Benjamin and going to do what the other did not. And he's going to take them out. And I just think, isn't that God? I mean, God is just incredible how he does this. It just, the Lord's plans in this regard. All right, and of course, Esther, Hadassah of her Jewish name. She is, again, Mordecai's cousin, uncle, adopted daughter that he will raise up again. As Maggie mentioned, boy, we know her parents, her family have either been destroyed, have died. They did not come into the captivity. Going back to when the Babylonians came in different waves and took them out. And now the people have stayed scattered. And we know that, whatever her family origin was, it's only down to this older family member, uncle. And remember, don't be in the Jews. They would often, as we talked about with Ruth, with Boaz, his mother was not Rahab. It's probably like a grandmother, great grandmother. That's how the Jews would say, my mother, my father. But often they're generational. They're thinking multi generations. Really, when you actually the succession. Yeah, Jeff.
Did you say that this happened after the time of Ezra and Nehemiah?
No, this happens. That happens in the 440.
Well, you said that Darius was the father of Xerxes.
Right.
And Darius is the one. Isn't Darius the one that lets the Ezra? Or is it?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be close. They're going to be contemporaries. I mean it's going to be yes. Yeah, part of the timeline. I can get the exact timeline to trace that. But,
It's the same, I think he's saying, is it the same Darius in?
I was just saying, if Darius' son is the king here,
right.
then this would be after the time of Ezra and
Yeah,
Nehemiah,
yeah.
because Darius is the king.
Yes.
That led
Yeah.
into
Yeah, I got my timeline off there a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious. It's just so this is even more than 70 years, because that's when the first captives went back was 70
Right.
years.
Yeah. 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 So Esther is obviously she's the focal point of the book. She is a heroine. She's a hero of faith, but she doesn't get there immediately. She's a reluctant hero, right, in the story. She would rather what? With her identity, keep it, stay in the background. And Mordecai has to continue to prompt her and get her to realize this. this is what, how do you know God hasn't, you didn't say God, but how do you haven't come to this royal position for such a time as this? And so she is, how can I say this? She's flawed. Her faith is not strong. She is morally compromised. She'll spend a night with the king, and they didn't play cards all night. I can promise you that. She will be the queen. The queen is basically the leader over the harem. Hello, the harem. You know the harem. In that part of the world, there's still, and so there are lower ranks. The queen is kind of considered the top. If you think the king sees the queen as equal and all that, no. And we're going to see that in just a moment. What Xerxes thinks about the women, the queen.
How old would you say she is?
Esther. I mean, there's speculation that she's anywhere from. They typically would marry young. They would want, if they would want a virgin, they would typically be in that, 15, 16, 18, 20 range. I mean, these are not 25, 30-year-old women here. And of course, women would marry, women would have children at young ages, and so she's definitely young. We don't know how young she is exactly, but I would say probably in that 15 to 21 range. She's a young woman, a young lady.
To me, that kind of explains some of the
Sure.
hesitancy to
Oh, absolutely.
step out in faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely is that. Okay, so themes we've talked about: God's providence. Ivana had mentioned that, Esther 4 and 14. How do you not know you've not come to the royal position for such a time as this? For such a time as this. We know it was for such a time as this because we get to read the end of the book, the story. We've seen how the movie ends. And they didn't know that. They didn't know how it ends. And so that's faith, yeah.
She's still not real thrilled with it because she finally says, fine, I'll go, but if I perish, I perish.
Yeah, I mean, I think her faith is getting there, but it is.
She doesn't have a lot of confidence
Yeah.
at that moment,
Yeah.
even if Mordecai does.
We talked about how this with God's providence, God's name is not mentioned in the book, but all the events happen, no doubt, because God working behind the scenes to make them work. You don't see him, you don't hear him, but he's there. This is also where we have the Jewish feast of Purim that we'll talk about. Incidentally, not in the Torah. You will not turn to the Torah, Genesis to Deuteronomy, and read about God instituting the Feast of Purim. And so we'll talk about that. Some interesting things about that. When we, I can't say anymore. I don't want to. That'll get me in trouble. We'll chase that. I don't want to chase that. Animosity towards the Jews. Obviously, you see that throughout the Bible. And they're always a persecuted, conquered people. They're always, God said he chose them. Remember in the beginning? He said, I chose you not because you were the biggest people, right? But you were the what?
Smallest.
You were the smallest. God shows he's going to work through the ordinary and to do extraordinary things. And so God's people have always been. Jesus, when he came into the world, there was time where the Jews, again, were under Roman occupation or rule. And that's just been through most of their history up until the last, few decades. And obviously what we see now with between the Israelis and the Palestinians and the war over there. But, all right. And then courage. We see courage. Mordecai, we see his courage. I'm not bowing down. We'll talk about that. Why and what's going on there. I'm not doing it. Mr. Haman, big shot. Everybody else does, not me. Courage of Mordecai. Esther, finally we'll get there. Vashti, we'll talk about her in just a second here. I want to shortchange her. And so we see the theme of courage. There's all faith. We see so many others, but...
The young boy that overheard the plot.
Yeah, the young boy that overheard the plot. Yeah. It's a great book on courage. Okay, let's glance here a little bit. Let me see how I'm doing on my time. Okay, not the worst, not the best. So we're about right where we need to be. Okay, this happened during the time of Xerxes. Tells us chapter 1. He ruled over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Kush. We've talked about that vast kingdom that the Persians ruled over. And he's in the royal throne at the citadel of Susa. He's in his 3rd year of his reign. He's giving a royal banquet for all his nobles, officials, military leaders of the Persian Media. The princes, the nobles of the provinces were present. Now, I don't have time to delve into this, but what we know historically, his father, Darius, boy, they just wanted Greece. They got most of Greece except Athens and Sparta. We know that historically. You know where I'm going. You've probably seen some shows and movies. And Darius wanted it. Boy, he wanted it so bad. That beautiful. Mackenzie got to go to Greece this past summer. Woo, beautiful, beautiful. She was out on that beach, out on that coast. Are you kidding me? Who wouldn't want that, right? You're from the desert in Iraq and Iran and that soil and everything. And they couldn't get it. Darius was defeated at Marathon. You know that historically. They were pushed back and defeated. His son will take the throne. And guess what? Dad couldn't do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take on those Athenians, those Athens. I'm going to take Sparta. Hello? You know what happens, don't you? Now they're pushed back. They're defeated. You've probably seen that movie 300, kind of loosely based on that, but it's not going to happen. He will be defeated just like his father. He's drunk on not just wine. You know, what are these men drunk on? Power. What are people still drunk on? Power. Oh my, I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going any further. I'm not going to go any further. And so we see that here. He is, so what he's doing, here's what's going on. He's trying to rally support. There's just no way around this. Now, he can't control his own queen. So that tells you a little bit about, these are some strong women. He wants to get everybody on board and excited about, hey, Dad was defeated, but it's going to be different with me. We're going to sail over there. We're going to take that Greece. We're going to defeat the Athens. We're going to take Sparta. But it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of troops. It's going to take a lot of your sons and daughters. It's going to take a lot of willpower from the people. And so how do you get people to buy in? Well,
Show 'em examples.
best way is to buy them off. Best way is buy them off. I mean, basically, right? Come on, I'm going to declare. What's he declare here? What's this kind of feast is? Look at this. For a full, verse 4. Hello? 180 days. He displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom. And historians are telling us he's using that to leverage support for this military occupation, is what he's doing. He doesn't have the moral credibility and the strength to get up and say, here's what we're doing, and let's go do it. Again, he can't even get his queen to come in. We'll see that in just a minute. So he's a weak man, morally. He's a tyrant. He's a narcissist, egomaniac. That's what all these men were. And so he's trying to rally the troops. 180 days, when these days were over. And so what happens here? Probably these people are rotating. They do not all come and live at Susa for 180 days. Susa. Probably what happens is they rotate different officials. All right, now I want to meet with these guys. All right, you guys out of here. Next.
Come and go, please.
Next. All right, I need to talk to your grandpa. Go get your dad here. Now, he's next. Didn't he used to serve under my father? I need to speak to that commander. That's what's happening. He's drumming up support. He's drinking. They're feasting. He's bribing them. He's trying to get them on board. Leadership without moral character and integrity. That's what it is. And, well, I'm not saying anything about anything today. Is anything changed? Where men who have no moral character want to lead, but they can't. So what do they resort to? Bribery, bullying, all of that. And nothing's changed. Oh my. I'm going to stop right there. Let's keep going. And so within the palace, the garden, all this, he's displaying everything. By the king's command, verse 8, each guest was allowed to drink without restrictions. What he does when these days were over, back at verse 5, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days. Now, probably what's going on here, this is all of his servant workers. What have they been doing for 180 days?
Taking care of these people.
You ever what are you like at the end of Thanksgiving night, Christmas night? Hey, it was glad to see everybody. Out the door you go, please. I mean, hello? You're ready when they come and you're ready when they leave. I'm sorry. I love my family, but I'm tired. And that's just what, 6, 7, 8 hours? They've been putting on 180 days with these drunken officials. And at least he has the decency to say what? Well, I'm going to give you guys 7 days. And so now he's got 7 days. I know I heard a bell, but I got a couple minutes. It's 10:10. That's my 5-minute warning. They're having it in the garden and all this. Look here. By the wine was abundant, in keeping with the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink with no restrictions. For the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man that he wished. And then verse 9. Now notice here, Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Why 2 banquets? Well, maybe men and women, maybe. Maybe she was organizing the women. We're not sure exactly, but I can tell you, these 2 banquets are going to come in conflict. They're going to come in conflict. And that's going to set the first stage here as he is going to say, as she gives a royal banquet for the women. And on the 7th day, King Xerxes was in high spirits. Did you like that? When I was a kid, wine and spirits. I never understood that. Oh, yeah. Now I know spirits. People are in good spirits initially when they drink. Not so good spirit later on, but he at the moment is in high spirits, and he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served. Again, these would be men. We're going to get into this. Okay, I'm going to try to, keep it PG, but these men are in charge of the harem, the women. Esther has someone who's what? In charge of her and her group. And so he wants them to bring Queen Vashti wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and the nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. So we'll have to stop there. But the rabbis took an interpretation that she's definitely being asked to parade herself, probably in a provocative way. There are some rabbis who say likely wearing only her royal crown. We're not sure exactly. But more than likely, displayed in some sort of trophy, provocative, look here. He doesn't see her, as a person. Sees her as an object. She's objectified.
She's in the Me Too.
Yeah. But she's objectified, right? Now, I'm thankful in our modern, educated, 21st century culture, we don't objectify women either. I mean, we're beyond that now, right? I mean, this is just antiquated, old, has-been stuff. We would never parade that, right? Objectify women, see them as simply objects of desire of men.
Of course, now we have women
Better
who
not.
do it
Yeah.
without the
Now we have women that what?
do it without the men. They do it for their own
Yeah.
glory.
Yeah. So, well, we got into a lot there, and we hadn't even got started. But we'll pick up there, keep reading in chapter 1, and we will get into some more of this good stuff.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.